Hi, Lisa. Um, I promised you this video back during finals week when I was not supposed to be reading this story, but I was. And I promised you that I would read to you from this wonderful, wonderful book. My camera's probably turning it backwards, but this wonderful book of professional fan fiction. The story about Loki meets the cast of Twilight. And it's called Twilight of the Gods. And I'll show you the picture. Which, see if I can center it. There's a beautiful, beautiful picture of Loki with his mouth open. You probably couldn't hear what I just said because I was hiding behind the book, but there's a beautiful picture of Loki with his mouth just sort of hanging there. And, oh, before I start, I will also show you how my puppy is sleeping. Right there, because he's cute. And behind it is the picture of me from my bat mitzvah that I never hung up. Oh, and you can see my room as well, which I do actually keep in a reasonable cleanness. Let's see. I don't know if you can see them. There are some clothes on the ground, but look how nice and semi-neat it is. It's impressive. So, without further ado, I think I just hit my computer. Okay, without further ado, oh, you can also see I'm wearing my Expecto Patronum shirt from Bryn Mawr Greek and Latin and Classics program. My computer just freaked out. I hope it's still recording. Twilight of the Gods by Chris Ryle. And it starts off with a quote here. See if I can put this. It starts off with a quote. Lie to a liar, for lies are his coin. Steal from a thief, for that is easy. Lay a trap for a trickster and catch him at first attempt, but beware of an honest man. And in parentheses, you probably can't see it if I put the book up close, but in parentheses before it says man, it says W-O, so it's beware of an honest woman. And that is an Arab proverb. And being a Bryn Mawr woman, I approve of the little in parentheses bit. Preface. Oh, by the way, this is just such a wonderful story, written as, like, in the format of Stephenie Meyer's Twilight, but in a way that completely mocks it. I mean, it's Loki. What do you expect? But preface. I never given much thought to how I would die, because I never had to. My fate was written by any number of foolish scribes who put pig's blood to parchment to tell of the coming Ragnarok that we gods will soon face. Sorry if I mispronounced any Norse words here. For those of you mortals who haven't yet sat around a campfire and heard those tales, Ragnarok means Twilight of the Gods. As in, the day the sun ceases to shine on us, and you humans are forced to find some other, lesser, group of deities upon whom to cast your prayers. Hold on. God. There we go. That said, it tends to make you rethink what you know about your impending fate when you unexpectedly find yourself staring down the business end of a sword, as I now was. She pulled me close, her blade poking a bloody kiss into the underside of my jaw. She stared at me with those cold eyes of hers. It appeared likely to me now that my time would come sooner than was written. I suppose, all things considered, it's better at this point in my life to perish in the arms of a passionate woman than it is to do so in the flaming conflagration those annoying poets go on about. Still, had I known then what I know now, I never would have come here to how do you pronounce this word? It's not Jotunheim, it's like Jotunheim, or I don't know. I'm pronouncing it Jotunheim for this because that's the easiest way. In the first place. Oh, who am I kidding? I always knew it would go down exactly this way. I made sure of it, in fact. Your dreams are what you make of them, after all, and my foolish dream of finding love was always going to lead me to this." The huntress drew back her sword, its perfectly honed blade reflecting a silvery line across its intended target. My neck. I suppressed a yawn so as not to embarrass her. Death can be so tedious, and not much is worse in the eyes of Loki than tedium. My computer is overheating, so I'm going to try to find a new position where it can sort of rest on my knees and have air currents flowing beneath it, I guess. I don't know. I just don't want it to overheat because that would be bad. My book will probably... Okay, I can't hold my computer like this. It's falling. Hold on. I could probably do this a lot more professionally and actually make this an audiobook, but... Chapter 1. Third Winter. And I showered just for you, so like, my hair all nice and wet, just how you know me. Before I get to that sordid business, let me back up a bit. My father offered to drive me there in his chariot. It wasn't so much that he wanted to personally escort me out of town as much as he needed me to leave Asgard proper under my own power while that was still an option. It was to the frigid wasteland of Jotunheim that I was now being exiled, an action that he assumed brought with it feelings of great horror to me. I loved the golden spires of Asgard, but my presence here was no longer working for me, or for the general populace. They wished me politely removed for a time, as my father explained. I have an idea. Hold on, this is not part of the book. This is called me saying I have a lap desk. I'm going to go get it so my computer doesn't overheat, and I don't have to hold it balancing. Hold on. I do have pants on, by the way, in case it didn't look like it just now. See, pants? Okay. This is my really cool lap desk that I decorated, like, 3 years upside down. And probably backwards, like 3 years ago or something. This was, like, all of my favorite passages of a play that I was assistant director of at the time. And all the funniest quotes written all around this thing, which is pretty wonderful, I must say. I was quite genius. See if I can... Oh, sorry, Rocky. I just sat this thing down on my dog. He is fast asleep and did not even notice. Let's see. Oh, where was I? They wished me politely removed for a time, as my father explained. Loki, my father said to me, I must spirit you away from Asgard in the darkness of nightfall. For if brave, all-hearing Heimdall becomes aware that you still reside within these walls, he will pull your entrails from your body, tie them to my raven's wings, and send them ashore. And I shan't blame him in the least. That was why my father was the leader of all Asgard, his ability to put a positive spin on dire events. My father stared at me. His one remaining eye was likely looking me up and down, filled with its usual mix of pity and remorse-tinged loathing. This time I didn't notice, because it was the ocular cavity where his other eye used to occupy space that was truly troubling me. My father once plucked out that offending eye in what I considered to be a misguided quest for knowledge. After all, I venture to say that the knowledge he received upon removing the orb was something along the lines of, "Don't pull your own eye out, fool, it hurts like hell." My one-eyed father had his other son, my half-brother, constantly by his side, so what need had me for now? We don't look alike, my father and I, and not just because I have two good eyes with which to see. We're not blood relations, he and I. Heimdall, the miserable oaf, Asgard's sentry, liked to spread vile stories that I am actually descended from two malicious frost giants, and ended up in Odin's care after he slew my real parents in battle. In addition to Heimdall, who seems to have taken it upon himself to report my misdeeds to my father, my lunk-headed stepbrother Thor also seeks to curry favor with Odin. And since he is the fruit of my father's well-traveled loins, I have been feeling like naught but an unwanted burden. My dear father, king of the gods though he may be, likes to feel needed, and it's Thor who truly needs the supervision and help. Thor would likely forget to eat were not my father there to provide sustenance. This is not a smart lad I'm speaking of, whereas I am an entity unto myself, dependent on no man or god. But still, I've been wanting to leave for a while, father. I had practiced this speech since the recent incident that really turned opinion against me, and I was starting to believe it myself. It's my dog who raises my concern. I don't want to leave him here. He needs me, that pup. Can I? It is no longer a question of your wants, child. Remaining within these walls will result in your immediate death and dismemberment, and I prefer that not to happen under my auspices. Dismemberment, too? Why is everyone so mad, father? My son, need you ask? The brightest of us has been extinguished through your misdeeds. My father had a way of cutting to the quick. You must go, but I will watch over you from afar, he said. Be it as a hawk, or a bear, or a rutting pig, father. No, I forget myself. Mother is doing her dutiful best to finally curb your rutting, isn't she? I could suddenly see enough distaste in his one eye to be glad that its mate was no longer perched on the other side of his nose. We departed that evening. Foregoing his sky chariot, my father chose instead to spirit me away in the guise of a snow owl, and he clutched me, now transfigured into a common rat, not my choice of animal, mind you, in his talons. Also, this was not my preferred way to travel, let me tell you. As we traversed the night sky, my father remained silent. I noticed the temperature dropping considerably. In the sky, I mean. My father's own temperature was already matching the frigid air before we even took flight. Father, might we stop for some warmth? My teeth are chattering, and this rat body isn't equipped for... Your teeth chatter like the rodent you have become, my son. Now remain quiet. Quiet wasn't in my nature, whether I was rat or god, however. Father, the cold. It persists beyond the norm, doesn't it? We should be basking in a warm spring evening for this flight, should we not? Aye, Loki, that we should. He squeezed my rat form a little tighter, perhaps unconsciously, but likely not. It would indeed be a renewed spring world for us all, had your machinations not led us to this point. You, my son, have brought on Fimbul winter. Ragnarok cannot be far away now. Fimbul winter. That is, winter lasting for 3 seasons in a row without break. Winter so cold it threatens to crack the 9 worlds in half. The Everwinter, the Endstorm, the... Loki, are you listening? Of course, father. Cold, snow, Armageddon, got it. I think he kept talking, but really, with the cold numbing my tiny ears, and still more talk of our preordained fates, who could be expected to listen properly? I was saying, Loki, that if you... Here comes another word, by the way, that I don't know how to pronounce. I was saying, Loki, that if you gaze across the horizon, you will see the world tree, Yggdrasil. That was it, by the way. Yggdrasil. I'm pronouncing it Yggdrasil because that's how I want to. Its branches extend into the heavens and across this world, as well as others. Perhaps soon you will sit under its all-encompassing coverage and reflect upon what you have done. Perhaps there you will learn what I seem unable to teach you. Possibly, father. Or perhaps I will instead become a beaver and eat through its branches. My father released me from his talons suddenly, his wings never beating any slower as he did so. I dropped down in the night sky, the heavy clouds through which I fell coating me with a layer of ice that only helped increase my speed. My father, the one-eyed owl, was already out of sight when I struck the ground, and hit it hard, I did. but at least the impact jarred loose all the ice and soot stuck to my ratty fur. Poor Loki. Before changing back to my now bruised human form, I lay on the ground, letting my bones and muscles stitch themselves back together. My flattened lungs gasped for deep breaths of air. I was a rat. I was bruised and dirty, and I was alone in the cold, dark night. So it was that Loki the trickster-god came to Jotunheim, just in time for the new school year to begin. Okay, by the way, this is a pretty long story, so I understand if you listen to this in parts, because I'm checking pages now, and I have about 24 to go, and it's at almost 16 minutes now. So I totally understand if you want to watch this in parts, but I am getting this out of the way right now because it is a fun story and I want to, and I don't want to do this again another time. Continuing. This frozen area of the eternal realm was where I was now stuck, an action that I took to with equal parts horror and anticipation. I enjoyed living in Asgard, the grandeur and pomposity of it all. I was enamored with the extreme seriousness with which most of my godly cohorts went about their day. I loved deflating those pompous balloons, but I also felt alone in its stately walls. Loki, my father spoke to me through one of his ravens, which now took perch upon my shoulder. Abandoned by him though I had been, my computer screen just went black. 1 second, sorry. Yep, it's still recording. Cool. Abandoned by him though I had been, he couldn't just sever the golden string completely and loose me on snowy Jotunheim without parting words. Though you be not born of my blood, still you are my son. Still will I care for you from afar. Still will you use your bird to make sure I don't pull a fast one and leave this frozen wasteland, father. I know well how you work. Dearest Loki, the raven said again in its best bird-like approximation of my father's stentorian tones, I helped you avoid the reckoning that you were due, but the forces you have set in motion cloud the mood here every day, even as the doom clouds gather in the sky. Yes, now we had birds trying to make me feel guilty? You misunderstand. My message is two-tiered. The first thing I want to impart is that I need the time you spend in Jotunheim's school system to be productive. You need to learn humility, honor, and respect. I hope those classes are offered there, All-Father. And the second thing I need you to know is that there may not be an Asgard for you to return to when your lessons are done. Well, this was an interesting tactic to take. Packing up and moving where I can't cause any more mischief, father. Have you ever heard a raven emit an exasperated sigh? I just did. The forces in fiery Muspelheim are gathering, Loki. Thimble winter is but the beginning. From there, I'd expect the cold of this never-ending winter to dampen even the spirits of Muspelheim fire demons, my father. Sorry. I have something right there inside of my mouth, like on my tooth. Always levity from you when gravity is needed. I could no longer protect you from retribution were you to remain in Asgard, and now I must devote my energy toward preventing the impending conflagration. In short, I cannot keep watch over you. You will be alone, my son. We said our goodbyes. The bird resisted my attempts to kiss it on the lips, in part perhaps because it possessed no such lips. As it flew off, my father's bird words rang in my head. I was alone. Again, as it ever was. Well, my dog would join me soon, hopefully under nicer transport from Asgard than I had myself. Ugh. Sitting up straight hurts my back sometimes. That really shouldn't happen. Sitting up straight should not make it hurt, but I took refuge in a nearby barn and pondered my situation. The surrounding meadow and its wild horses grazing nearby would suit my dog just fine once he was sent along to me. Removed as I was from Asgard now, away from the familiar faces and regular opportunities to scheme against those windbags, I began to feel more alone than I ever had before. And one never wants to enter a new school fully alone, not even the great trickster-god himself. Jotunheim High School had a total of 336, now 37, students. The number of Asgardian school children upon whom I could visit my many pranks had numbered into the thousands. Also, lost my place. Also, I knew those children. I knew their parents. I likely out-schemed generations of the same family. Here, however, I knew not what to expect. I would be the outsider to these students, if I was lucky, that is. Worse still would be for my reputation, and my recent misdeed, which so many in Asgard found unforgivable, to follow me here. I knew from my earliest days of consciousness that I would never fit in amongst the Asgardians. Physically, I could alter my form to adopt the typically bulky form of your average godson. But mentally it was apparent I'd never be one of them. Instead, I took comfort in the goat meadows, as a fish in the lakes and streams, in my time soaring the heavens and excreting upon the heads of the self-important gods in my midst. But among others my age who dwelled within the realm eternal, I always felt removed from them. I certainly never befriended anyone there. Walking around my new surroundings, I happened upon a frozen patch that reflected my own haunted visage back to me. I looked sallow, pale, so no problems there anyways. But my heart, the very organ that most accused me of not possessing, beat with a certain ache I'd not noticed before. Add to that the nagging feeling in my head that the idea of an outsider such as me ever knowing true love was nothing but folly, and it becomes clear why a single tear escaped my eye that night, rolled down my cheek, and froze there. Damned Fimble Winter. The hollow ache in my heart persisted all night, and the pain was just beginning. I arrived at the school early the next morning. This is because the hours I keep are my own, and I refuse to be told when to arrive anywhere, which occasionally leads to awkward moments when I arrive too early, or even worse, on time, without aiming to do so. That never happens to me, I'm always late. But you know that, because you lived with me. I went to the school's administration office, where a heavy-set woman with a braid the thickness of my forearm looked me up and down. "I don't recognize you. New one then, ya?" Yes, I said, taking sudden interest in my boots as I felt her eyes looking me up and down. She handed my class assignments to me and I walked off, paying no heed to her parting platitudes and empty words about how I should do my best to fit in. Were I not trying to keep away the attention of the Asgardians who wanted my head, I might well have fit my sword in her back. Had I been able to keep my sword, that is. She confiscated it from me before I headed off, telling me that weaponry was allowed only in the hands of the teaching staff, not the students. Already this school's rules were proving tough to take. Perhaps I would have been better served to follow my original plan of disguising myself as a fish and swimming in streams to avoid the vengeful eyes of Heimdall and his back home. My first class was Old English, spelled O-L-D-E, of course, because how else would you spell it? My first class was Old English. The teacher spat out my name with distrust as she read it upon my class assignment. Loki Odinson. I felt all eyes from the other students on me. Oh, for the ability to use my magic so that I might transform their eyes to stones, that I might then cast each and every one of them into the river. Our reading assignments in the class were handed out. As I exited the class, I assumed that the minor trickery required for me to turn it to smoldering ash in my palm would raise no suspicions. A voice surprised me as I brushed the ashes from my hand. "Hey, the teacher called you Loki Odinson, right? Hi, Loki Odinson, I'm Aleph. Gods help me. Upon turning to face this intrusive wretch, I saw that he had to be a departed soul who rested in Valhalla, the land where dead warriors were welcomed upon their passing. Aleph was obviously here as a part of the school's exchange student program. His face and hands were disfigured from burns he no doubt suffered in his final battle upon this plain. In Valhalla, such a visage would appear healed, for the warrior's shade was returned to its most beautiful upon acceptance into the hall of the dead. But here in this school his appearance was distracting and rather repulsive. Just Loki, I said, doing my best to avert my eyes from his scarred countenance. Although I prefer you not only call me by name, but also not call me by name, but also forget my name and countenance altogether. Ha, good one. Anyway, I'm Aleph. Yes, so it would seem you are. They sometimes call me Aleph the Lost, but I'm not that bad with directions. I mean, the fire I walked into seemed like it sprung up out of nowhere. Lots of fires have sprung up lately. Seems like ever since beautiful Balder the Brave was killed by recent treachery that fire and pain have been around every corner. Well, maybe not fire here since it's so cold and snowy and cloudy, but still, wow, yeah. If Aleph's previous utterance were to be transcribed, let me just tell you that there is no way a scribe could portray the speed with which one word followed another. Aleph needed to earn his nickname and get lost ere I pluck his tongue from his charred face and feed it to a toad of non-discriminating palate. The droning timbre of his voice quickly became naught but an unintelligible buzzing in my head, as it soon was apparent that he required neither response nor acknowledgment in order to keep merrily prattling on. Aleph and I shared another class, and his incessant talking continued throughout. Following that, we headed in separate directions, and I thought I was through with him. But unfortunately, as I later made way to the many spits where fire-roasted lunches awaited us, he approached me once again. It had been a long day already, and not yet half done, and the constant feeling of scorn from teachers and students alike had been mentally exhausting. I craved neither food nor the companionship of Aleph, who is as interested in explaining to me the breed of goat we were to consume as I was in trying to tune out his voice. It was then that my aches, my hunger, my loathing for both myself and all others, all of these discomforts left my body in a flash, for it was there in the lunchroom, at that moment, that I first noticed them. A group of mysterious strangers across the lunching area. The rest of the world seemed to turn insubstantial and gray in comparison to what I now saw. There were 4 students all hunched together, keeping their distance from everyone else. Every one of them possessed a near-translucent skin tone, as pale as anyone yet to be spirited away to Valhalla's halls. Their hair colors and body types varied greatly, yet there was something about them that made them all seem the same. I couldn't quite put my finger on it. Had I been able to, I would have saved myself the grief to come. The smallest of them all stood a foot taller than anyone else within sight. They all had dark eyes, with deep shadows under those ebony eyes. I was nigh mesmerized by what I saw, but it wasn't because of their overall appearance. No, I stared because their icy faces were inhumanly beautiful, like visions glimpsed in an oracle's reflecting pools. One in particular, a female. They all bore the visage of godlike beings, yet I was myself a northern god, and familiar with the surrounding pantheons. Which begged the question, "Who are they?" I said in a breathless tone. By this time, Aleph and I had been joined by other students he knew. One of them was a female fire demon named Surti, another lowly Viking child. They ignored my query. Instead, Surti spoke at length about being here in Jotunheim as part of the advanced scout for some invasion or other. If I had a gold coin for every time I heard someone talk about their intent to invade somewhere, I could swim in a pond full of gold. Besides, I could not be bothered to listen to her when there was a much more captivating scene displayed in front of me. Sturdy changed her tactic, moving from talk of impending war to a subject that actually interested me. The answer to my question of just who was the bedeviling creature in front of me. She said, "They're the Gayrods. Those blondes are Grit and Grape, the thin one is Poor, and that brunette," she paused for effect, "is Gjalpa." I ran the name through my head. Gjalpa. They all lived together with Geirröder and his wife in the northern shadow of Yggdrasil. "They don't look related," I said. "Oh, they're not." Sturdy had clearly grown bored with this conversation, and she absent-mindedly melted the leftover chicken bones in her grasp as she spoke. "Some say they moved here years ago. Some say they've always been here. Geirröder adopted all of them, wherever they're from." As we spoke, I glanced again at the group of over-tall strangers. From across the room, Gjalpa appeared to turn her head and stare at me. Not just look in my direction, but into mine own eyes. Is that even possible, that she should notice such an outcast as I? Well, let me correct that. Of course it's possible that she would notice me. For am I not still Loki? But regardless of my opinion of myself, I quickly turned away. When I looked back a moment later, she and her group were gone. "Time to get going," Sturdy said. "Gotta study. Schoolwork before making war." She wandered off with her friends, leaving me alone with my thoughts. I'm just making sure my computer doesn't fall asleep again. Leaving me alone with my thoughts. And Aleph. "Where are you headed next? Let me see." He grabbed my class schedule from my hand. "Ah, you've got metallurgy next. Same with me. Come on, I can walk you there. I'll show you my nickname isn't accurate anymore. Aleph the Found I am." I prayed that Heimdall didn't hear the sound of my eyes rolling from here to Asgard, but it wasn't out of the question. In the metallurgy class, my luck improved when Aleph drifted away to sit with others he knew. For an anonymous and disfigured dead Viking on loan to the school from Valhalla, he certainly seemed to know a vast array of people. He took a seat in the back of the room, his endless prattle wafting away from my ears as I can't turn the page. 1 second. His endless prattle wafting away from my ears as I headed toward the one remaining open seat. It was then that I noticed the person occupying the seat next to where I was headed. Gjalpa Geirrod. I took my seat next to her. As I sat, I turned to look at her. At her shoulder, anyway. Her actual head sat at least another head's length above mine. That happens to me a lot, too. I'm short. These were not small people, the Geirrods. She turned away from me, and her frosty demeanor was palpable. As the teacher, a hideous dwarf who I could scarcely stand to lay eyes on, began his lessons, I noticed that Gjalpa's hand was frozen in a fist. The waves of coldness continued to emanate from her. Had I somehow so wronged her with my furtive glances earlier that she was filled with cold loathing to me? Or was this normal behavior for her? My reputation, my recent misdeed in Asgard, those could not have followed me here so quickly, could they? I dared not speak to her until she relaxed her fist. This continued on for the duration of the class. The disgusting dwarf spoke much, danced around animatedly as he spoke of smelting steel, and did his level best to keep the class engaged. I paid his foul self no attention whatsoever. Despite the perceptible chill I felt, sweat escaped my brow in a trickle, and I prayed to my mother that Gjalpa not notice my discomfort. Finally, the clang releasing us from our lesson sounded. Better to have poisonous venom dripped on my face for all eternity than to have to experience that awkwardness again. Gjalpa arose before the bell could finish chiming and quickly exited the class. "Loki," it was Aleph, already at my side. These people moved quickly. "Well, did you pierce Gjalpa's heart with a mistletoe arrow, or what?" "What? Of course not. Why would you ask such a thing? And with such a choice of weapon? Whatever do you mean?" "Hey, take it easy," he said. "I've just never seen her act like that before, that's all." So this was not her normal behavior. I carried home that small comfort. The night was a long one for me. My dog had yet to be sent to me, and I missed his company. But I became even more dismayed when I replayed Gjalpa's bizarre behavior over and over in my head. She didn't know me well enough to behave in such a manner. I was also troubled by the fact that this bothered me. I have e'er been alone, but not lonely. Until now. Loki, the one, the ever-present, the independent trickster-god, could not escape the pangs of loneliness that washed over him. Me. The barn floor was especially uncomfortable this night, and sleep was long in coming. Poor Loki. The next day was better. ... And worse. All night, I dreaded Gjalpa's angry glances to come the next day. I longed to confront her and demand to know what her problem was. It seemed somehow important to know. It turned out that my sleepless night was for naught, as she wasn't in school at all. None of the Gayrods were. It was especially disheartening to realize this, since the sun broke through a bit, making the day rather pleasant, for a land in the throes of a year-long third winter, that is. Gjalpa and her adopted family didn't attend school the rest of the week. The following week, walking across the meadow to my armament class, I noticed the Gayrods gathered around the chariot parking area, feeding their horses. They joked and laughed with one another. In short, they looked like normal kids. Taller by far than the others, yes, but lighter of spirit than I saw upon my first introduction to them. I wondered if my great sense of loneliness was what caused me to project such strange personality traits on Gjalpa upon meeting her. Gjalpa turned suddenly, again staring across the field and, seemingly, directly into my eyes. Dun dun dun! Even worse, she suddenly began walking this way. I hesitated for a moment, turning this way and that, pondering which way to go just long enough for her to appear in front of me, cutting off any escape option. Giantesses can cover a lot of ground very quickly, I noted mentally. "Hello," she said. Her voice was like the beating of a snow owl's wings across a crisp winter night. Unsure of myself in her presence, I said nothing. Notice, by the way, symbolism, I guess, I don't know. The last time they mentioned owls in the story, his father was an owl, so, I don't know, maybe he was attracted to his father, I don't know. It's Freudian theory. Except that makes no sense, because it's Loki, but still. Where am I? Here. "Hello," she repeated, not acknowledging my awkwardness. "My name is Gjalpa Gayrod. I didn't have a chance to introduce myself before. You must be Loki." "How do you know my name? I mean, why did you call me Loki?" "Well, in class when you sat by me, the professor called you by that name." "Ah, right. The vile, disgusting dwarf." She smiled. "Yes, the teacher. You raised your hand when he referred to you as Loki, so it seemed reasonable to assume that that was indeed your name." Indeed. Stupid, stupid, stupid. I brought my gaze up to her face, an action which required me to crane my neck nearly to its breaking point. It was then that I noticed her eyes. Did you go sleepless last night?" As soon as I asked the question, I regretted it. Stupid, stupid, stupid. "No," she said. Her eyes were blazing red right now, a contrast to the deep black the first day I saw her. I noticed she clenched her hand into a fist again. But despite that implied threat of violence upon my person, or perhaps because of it, I felt a sense of calm around Gjalpa, calm like I had rarely known in all my days. We spoke not again of her changing eye color. Really, for one such as I who could alter his physical appearance into any living creature, what difference did variable eye color make? Our conversation continued on. "It's good news about the snow, isn't it?" "Not really," I said. "You don't like the cold? You'd think that nearly a full calendar's turn of the same weather might have acclimated you. It's not my favorite, I said. I wanted to be more forthcoming with this person. I wanted to tell her how I felt a connection with her already, but I dared not say more. Yet. Perhaps the amassing fire demons will bring a more temperate climb, she said. I only think she was joking. You must find Jotunheim a difficult place to live. You have no idea. However, an unpleasant life is still preferable to the alternative back home. Things there were complicated. Why did you come here? You can tell me. I hesitated. Were my secret to get out, the rending of my limbs could be soon to follow. And I was rather attached to my limbs, and they to me. However, there was something in her plaintive manner that appealed to me. I let down my guard and told her who I was. I told her everything. Only later would I realize what a mistake that was. And so it was really nothing more than a prank gone wrong. Greer Balder used to boast of his impervious nature. How only the mistletoe plant could gravely harm him. Am I truly to be faulted for putting that boast to the test? Yes, Balder was the most beloved of all the northern gods, and yes, he was slain by a mistletoe arrow that did indeed pierce his heart. Some could argue that I was directly responsible for his death. Some? She smiled again, eyes blazing red but possessing no judgment in them. Okay, well, all. But really, he must share some blame for making that kind of boast. It felt like a direct challenge to one such as me. Was I saying too much? I kept the story as truthful as possible, although I did not mention the fact that I would indeed have slain that preening fool myself had I thought I could get away with it. Instead, I armed the blind god Hoder. I can't pronounce it because it says H and then the O with the umlaut over it, and then this D with like a curving line and like a cross through it that I think is supposed to be a D, but I'm not entirely sure. I think it's supposed to be pronounced like a D. That's what I'm saying. It's definitely not a D. It's definitely not in English. And then an R. So I'm calling him Hoder. But you probably know how to actually pronounce it. Instead, I armed the blind god Hoder with an arrow carved from mistletoe. But how could I have known that the unseeing fool would strike a killing blow? The one thing I hear of mistletoe, she said, smiling, is that the plant has other, more mutually beneficial uses than just mayhem. And with that, Loki's own heart suddenly felt pierced. We spoke no more. She looked down into my eyes. I stared up at her, her head looming large in my vision, the source of brightness amidst the storm clouds that had again gathered overhead. I know not how long we spoke, for time stopped moving during our conversation. However, when it did restart, it did so in a hurry. As we stood in the field, a carriage led by 2 large horses started to take flight in the distance behind us. But as I would learn later, the foolish coachman only had with him 1 large carrot, and neither horse was willing to share it with the other. The piebald horse slammed his head into the other horse in an attempt to snatch the carrot away. This sent the carriage careening wildly out of control. Right for us! The coachman was helpless to stop this as the horses battled, themselves oblivious to anyone in their path. The carriage slid recklessly out of control across the ground, with us in its path. As much as the fates like to predict our end, they are often wrong, and I assumed that my time of demise was only seconds away. Suddenly, Gjalpa leapt in front of me, crouching down and touching the ground with both hands, palms pressed flat against the hard-packed dirt like this. The horses and the carriage suddenly slid to either side of us, as though they struck patches of ice that did not exist before. The carriage slammed hard into the wall to the left of us, although I did not see this. I had shut tight my eyes, preparing for the crashing impact. I opened my eyes and saw Gjalpa looking into them. The redness I saw in her eyes before was gone. Her eyes again beautiful black pools. Loki, are you all right? I'm fine, I said. I cast my eyes to the carriage. The horses were damaged, perhaps unable to ever fly again, but still living. The coachman was less fortunate, which mattered not, since had he not perished in this collision, he would have met Loki later this evening and learned a valuable and final lesson in driving care. As it was, I made a mental note to revisit the two horses at midnight and impart the same lesson. My puppy being sent to me this afternoon would be in need of a good snack. Gjalpa, how did you turn the carriage so? It appeared to strike twin patches of ice on the ground. Twin patches of ice, but the ground on which we stand has no such ice, Loki. I was right next to you. Those horses luckily veered off at the last instant. As she helped me off the ground, I doubted my senses, and I doubted her story more. Magic was not exactly an unknown commodity in my life, and I was sure I saw something magical today. No, you were in front of me. But you touched the ground, and then they slid away. No. Yes, I saw you, Gjalpa. No, please, Loki, trust me. I wanted to trust her, I did. But fooling the eyes of a trickster-god is easier said than done. Still, I felt a bond with her that was new and surprising to me, and not so easily discarded. So I chose not to press the issue. The important fact of the situation, that Loki yet lived, was the only tangibly important detail anyway, and so I let the matter drop. I thank you, Gjalpa, for, talking to me, I mean. I should go. I'm a bit shaken up, and I must prepare my barn for the arrival of my dog. He is being sent to me, and he'll be hungry. I must prepare for him a nice supper. I looked at the two injured horses as I said this. My computer fell asleep again, sorry. It is back alive. We parted. She went back to rejoin her adopted family, and the crowd that had gathered similarly departed. No one wanted to be present when the foolish coachman was spirited away to the halls of the dead, lest his guides decide he needed additional company on that particular journey. Yet I stayed. I bent down to touch the ground in front of me. While all the hard-packed soil was cold to the touch, nothing in this endless winter town was anything but cold. I could have sworn that I felt icy. Sorry, I'm yawning. Oh, my computer's about to die. Good thing I tried to look at the time. It wasn't plugged in right. I could have sworn that I felt icy patches that dissipated under the warmth of my touch. Nothing was visible to the eye, and so I had no proof. I considered what this meant, and tried to make sense of the jumbled thoughts running around through my head. I felt like I was close to puzzling out what I was thinking, for I felt a familiarity with Gjalpa, a kinship unlike any I'd known before. I might well have avoided the anguish to come had I not been interrupted, but a crackling and yawning again, sorry. I might well have avoided the anguish to come had I not been interrupted, but a crackling in the sky jolted me from my reverie. Next section, Chapter 2. Third wheel. My puppy is stretching over here if you want to see him. He's really cute. He's right there. You can see. I can't aim my computer very well. He was stretching, and now he's not stretching anymore. Sorry, you missed the cuteness. That's what happens, you know? That's what happens. My foot is itchy. Chapter 2. Third wheel. I'm getting more comfortable this time. I'm not sitting up as much. You can deal with the fact that I don't look quite as professional. But it's getting late. As in, it's 1:44 and I've been exhausted and going to bed at 9-something every night because I'm working with 2-year-olds, and there is a moth in my room. It should not be here. I don't like having moths in my room, but it's better than a cricket. Better than a cricket. Chapter 2. Third Wheel. I'd been told many things about the Valkyries from my father and the elder gods. Those death-obsessed riders of winged horses, those shield-maiden choosers of the slain, those vengeful spirit warriors who would not only take departed souls to the deathland of Valhalla, but also, occasionally and capriciously, grab those still living and take them there as well. These horrid creatures were said to be monstrous in appearance, horrible of manner, and blackened of soul. You only ever want to meet the Valkyries once in your life, my father told me as a child, and even then, many souls wither in their presence before ever being able to complete the journey to Valhalla's fabled halls. It seemed my father never met hyperbole he didn't love. For the Valkyries who appeared now in front of me through an electrified hole in the sky possessed one other trait my father neglected to mention, or perhaps never knew for himself. After all, with only one eye it's difficult to see clearly. They were impossibly, inarguably gorgeous. My neck is stiff. Okay. Continue on. I ordered this thing that was supposed to help headaches or whatever on Amazon the other day, and the day it was supposed to arrive, I got an email saying that my refund had been processed, but Amazon still says, like, on the website, it still says that I have this ordered and that it just hasn't been shipped yet. But my credit card said that I have a refund, and that the reason was that because my order was canceled, but I never canceled it. So I'm kind of confused and just don't want to deal with Amazon customer service right now. But I thought I'd let you know, because I haven't let you know stuff in a while. And I feel like you need these mundane details of my life. Otherwise, like, what good is knowing me if you don't listen to all of my mundane details? Probably a lot of good knowing me without listening to my mundane details, or whatever. Maybe not a lot of, I don't know, whatever. But I'm telling you these mundane details anyway. And I like the word mundane, by the way, in case you didn't know. I really like this word mundane. As the three riders entered the school grounds on winged horses, so white in color that they fairly glowed with brilliant light, the shield maidens themselves nearly burned my eyes, so great was their beauty. I'm putting another pillow behind my head. This Camp Friends. It's from when I was like 13, and all my camp friends signed it and wrote me little messages. It's very cute, and it's a good pillow. One in particular especially caught my eye. Never before had the eyes of Loki been so ensnared so easily, but for the second time in recent memory I was seized by feelings new and unexplored. The third Valkyrie to exit the rift in the air was also the youngest. She appeared roughly my age, while the other two were visibly older and battle-hardened. The other two administered to the needs of the deceased coachman. I wonder if I'm making you yawn when you watch this. Yawns are contagious. Rocky's now licking my bed. Battlehard. The other two administered to the needs of the deceased coachman, but the smaller one approached me. Who are you, O man, that you stand in the presence of the Valkyries with a gaze that withers not? Formal types, these Valkyries. I am Loki, I said. Brynhilda, she said. Her hair was the finest gold, woven into lustrous, thick braids. Her silver battle armor seemed to be protecting a very pleasant figure. And who are your friends. Friends we are not, godling. We are Valkyries one and all. My companions Gerdriful and Garivor are both known for their prowess with the spear, as well as their caring touch in bringing the Einherjar, Einherjar, bringing the Einherjar to Valhalla's hallowed halls. I cannot pronounce that. Hallowed halls. Einherjar, surely a reckless fool who ran himself into a wall, nearly striking my person while doing so, doesn't qualify as a valiant warrior worthy of Valhalla. As Brynhilda started to answer, her shrewish companions cast their gaze in our direction. Brynhilda, leave the mortal alone and help us administer to this dead soul. She scoffed in their general direction. Surely two such capable Valkyries such as you are capable of preparing one mortal without young Brynhilda getting in your way. I whispered to her, suppressing my smile at her sharp tongue. Can you also tell them that Loki is no mortal but a god most strong? They shouted back at her. Foolish girl, dost you not know that you talked to Loki the Viper, Loki the Snake, Loki the Balder Killer? Such was my lot when my reputation preceded me. There was no hiding anything from Valkyries. That was you? Brynhilda smiled largely enough to reveal to me all of her perfect teeth. Pay them no mind, Loki Odinson. Valhalla's halls are better for having the great Balder in it. And to have orchestrated the death of one so fair and beloved, heedless of the consequences to come, well, that's just cool. Her stoic Valkyrie demeanor disappeared and she was a girl again. A girl with a battle-sharpened sword and fitted armor of the finest metals, but a girl in Loki's presence nonetheless. It appeared that even Valkyries who whiled away their days taking away departed warriors preferred the company of the bad boy gods, like myself. Would that I had known that before my machinations would prove so appealing to the fair sex. My cheek is itchy too. Really, my whole body is just itchy because I have dry skin because I'm sunburned. Fair Brynhilda, when you mentioned before that my actions against Balder had great consequences, what did you mean? Oh, never mind that now, Loki. Come, let us take a flight and talk a while. She reached down from her perch upon her steed, offering her hand so that I might join her on the back of her horse. I should go to bed soon. That's probably not going to happen for a while. Not until I finish this, at least. Only, her horse was having none of that. Flaring flames from its nostrils, the horrid creature whipped its head around at me and would have snapped my hand off in its powerful jaws had Brynhilda not intervened. That is, come, Loki, let us instead take a walk. My horse will wait here for us. It appears none but Valkyries may sit upon their horses, which suited me just fine. Perhaps my fair pup could use a meal of 3 such animals tonight, instead of just the 2 I had already planned. Upset were Brynhilda's traveling companions, but even they admitted that the wretch they were carting away did not require the aid of 3 Valkyries. They allowed her pass, commenting that they appreciated the constant business I sent their way, and also looked forward to seeing me very soon. It sounded on the surface to be a polite thing to say, but their wicked smiles told me there was deeper and more disconcerting meaning behind their words. At the moment, I cared not about such things. I was entranced by Brynhilda as we walked, partly because she seemed entranced with me, and any girl who admired Loki deserved in turn my admiration for their strikingly good taste. That coachman your Valkyrie sister spirited away. Why did he gain admittance to a hall of warriors anyway? Have the qualifications for Valhalla lapsed? Brynhilda, who also stood nearly a head's length taller than me, considered this even as she used her sword as a walking stick. absent-mindedly carving lines in the ground with its tip as we walked. No, he was, as you say, a fool, but the coming conflagration, an event that will be forever marked as starting with your plot against fair Balder, will fill Valhalla's halls with warriors, and our need for servants to suit their needs has grown. My actions, you say? Why, yes, Loki. Twilight is approaching. Fair Balder's passing has ignited the flames of war, and the fire demons from the depths have amassed an army of considerable enough size to finally— I cut her off with another question. Never mind that now, I said. Since you Valkyrie seem to know so much about, well, everything, what do you know of the Geirröds? Are they normal? The Geirröds. The girl who helped the demise of yon coachman. The other shield maiden said that she is one of the cold ones. The cold ones? She stopped and looked directly in my eyes. Yes, the Jotun. Your people call them frost giants. According to legend, she continued, noting the shock in my eyes, they are the bane of the gods and the natural enemy of us Valkyries. But why? They seem nice. Nice they are not, Loki. For, you see, their abilities are not only far beyond those of mortals, but their way of dealing with threats benefits not Valhalla. They tend to freeze their enemies, encasing them in glacier-thick blocks. This leaves them incapacitated, forever removed from the field of battle, but still living, and as such, off-limits to us Valkyries and denied rightful admittance to Valhalla. But, I countered, if they are not claiming the lives of warriors, this makes them not dangerous to be around, right? These Geirröds, they're not like the frost giants of eons past, are they? No, she said, getting gravely serious. They're not like those horrible frost giants from days of yore. They are the same ones. Dun dun dun. My slumber that evening was again long in coming. Brynhilde eventually took her leave, returning to Valhalla in an acrid burst of smoke and lightning. She told me she would have difficulty returning to see me without just cause, said cause being another dead soul to cart away to the Great Hall. I told her that I could see to that on a regular enough basis should she decide that she would like to see me again. She said she would, and she leaned in and kissed me on the cheek, sending a jolt of electricity through me. I instantly began plotting out who I could trick into dying so I might see her again. At school the next day, I made it through the rest of my studies in a daze, in part because there was nothing to be learned about life from repulsive dwarves and the other moronic persons presented to me as educators. Better that Loki should educate them about the ways of the world by cleaving their heads from their shoulders. But I digress. I had much to ponder. Loki the loveless, Loki the forlorn, Loki the ever detested. This is who I was in Asgard. This is how I saw myself. And suddenly, to be given a different perspective twice in the course of one day was worth heavy consideration. I did feel a kinship with Gjalpa that was hard to explain, although made easier by the suggestion of her origin, considering the rumors of my own frost giant lineage. Then again, perhaps the frost giant rumor was just Brynhilde looking to undercut the competition. After all, if she knew upon arrival that I was the Loki who was responsible for filling her hall with saps like Balder, then could she not also peer into my heart and see that I was smitten with Gjalpa? Similarly, did Brynhilde realize that her very nature drew me to her as well? A shield maiden who proved to be so much more alluring than I ever was led to believe. Similarly, did Brynhilde— I'm reading this section again because I got confused. Similarly, did Brynhilde realize that her very nature drew me to her as well? A shield maiden who proved to be so much more alluring than I was ever led to believe was an intriguing prospect indeed. Was this what it had come to so suddenly? Choosing between— and here's where it gets truly fandom. Just wait for it. Was this what it had come to so suddenly? Choosing between Team Gjalpa or Team Brynhilde? Perhaps I could seek to date both of these enchanting creatures. After all, Was I not Loki, the great trickster? If I could not maintain the deception of becoming embroiled in relationships with both of these delights, was I any more worthy of my nickname than Aleph was of his? I feel that loyalty is for lesser men, or for bramble-headed louts like my half-brother Thor, who had not the brain power to consider loving more than one other at a time. But I was not cut from that same simple sackcloth. Rather, if gods like my own father Odin had showed me anything, it was that all options are viable, and all outlets are to be pursued simultaneously. Yawning. Great Loki the Unloved deserved to make up for lost time. And besides, if Brynhilde could only come see me while also collecting the dead, I could just schedule those visits carefully around any other engagements I might have. This could work. But first, the question of Gishalpa's origin needed to be answered. My nose is very sunburned. It is itchy. Like here, and here, and here. It's itchy. Here's my eye. Now that I'm thinking about itching, now I'm all itchy all over. Not itchy. Not back and my knee. But first, the question of Gishalpa's origin needed to be answered. I don't remember if I read that sentence yet or not. My dog is waking up. Nope, now he's going back to sleep. Never mind. It was yet another dreary, cloudy day, the air growing ever more frigid. Thimble winter was seriously unpleasant the longer it persisted. Had I been informed that my machinations against Balder would result in such a terrible climate, I might well have chosen another god against whom to focus my ire. I saw Surdy upon arriving at the school grounds. 1 second. I saw Surdy upon arriving on the school grounds. She was speaking conspiratorially with 2 other fire demons, neither of whom were familiar to me. Good morn to you, Loki. Enjoying the cold weather? For now. She winked at the other 2. Yes, well, a good morning would be one that does not freeze the air in my lungs, Surdy. The 2 fire demons with her chuckled at that, though I knew not why. Coming right up, she said. Again, the other 2 laughed. I kept walking, paying no heed to that foolish girl or her flaming compatriots. In another day, I might well have set rock vipers against their flaming ankles as payment for their folly, but today I was too anticipatory over the idea of seeing Gishalpa again, and had no time to listen to their prattling. I saw her standing with her other family members, and once again she seemed preternaturally aware of my presence, and turned to look at me. Only this time her eyes blazed and I could read them clearly, even from a distance. Stay away. This girl was demonstrating considerable mastery at sending mixed signals, but I acquiesced and went to class. She took her seat next to me some time after the lessons had started. Her eyes were the color of deepest black. Gishalpa, Shh, Loki. Not here. Not here, but we only sit and listen to a detestable dwarf. I will never take lessons from such a monster. I will— Loki, please. I know you have questions. How could she know that? After school, meet me under the branches of Yggdrasil. Gishalpa, if you're not aware, the great world tree's branches extend out across the 9 realms. One could spend several lifetimes searching under those limbs and never find what he was looking for. Silly. Under the big branch, I mean. The one that blocks all of the sun's rays from reaching Jotunheim. Silly. She called me silly. Whereas before, Loki would have plucked out the tongue of any who dared refer to me in such a way. When she said it, it made me warm inside. And in this terrible winter world in which we all now lived, I would take the warmth where it came, even if it's from frost giants, which is kind of ironic there. Silly. This girl was utterly charming. If she told me then that she possessed the power to read minds, I would not have doubted it, for she suddenly turned and looked at me with a smile that set my heart soaring into Yggdrasil's great branches already. After our lessons were complete, lessons that had me plotting out the demise of someone who would allow me to see Brynhilde again, the dwarf was my leading candidate, I briskly made my way to Great Yggdrasil. It is difficult for the mortal mind to fathom Yggdrasil's size. Its mammoth trunk, out of which its world-encompassing branches grew, was thick enough at the base to require 7 lifetimes to walk a circle around it. Its branches spanned galaxies, extending across all horizons of possibilities. But even amongst that unfathomable largeness, there was one limb that stood out. Fortunately, its location was near enough to Jotunheim that I reached it in a reasonable amount of time. Under this branch, the sun has never shone through. Not even a sliver of its rays could penetrate the canopy above. It was there that I waited for Gjalpa. I did not have to wait long. "I'm sorry about earlier today," she said upon arrival, her appearance next to me surprising me despite the fact that I was always at the ready for anything. Her speed belied her size. "My brothers and sisters, they are wary of me getting too close to outsiders." "Outsiders? Then let me in, Gjalpa." "I have no wish to remain on the outside. I feel a connection with you, a closeness I wish to nurture. I need to know some things before I can fully surrender to the feelings I have now." "Loki, these words you tell me, they should scare me away. I am not so quickly drawn to others." "I don't easily let down my guard. There's something about you. It made me think that I could see myself spending all day with you. Every day." "All day? Every day?" "Gjalpa, I think I know why your eye color changes as it does." "Oh, is that so?" she said, arching an eyebrow under which sat an ebony eyeball. "Yes, when I first saw you, your eyes were black as a dwarf's heart. Curse that hated race. But then, another time, they flamed red. Is my eye color really what you have questions about, gentle Loki?" "Gentle? Me? In truth, Gjalpa, no. It was when the carriage nearly struck me. It slid away on patches of ice. Patches you created." She dropped her eyes, but was that still a small smile pursing her lips? This again? How would I even do something like that, Loki? I am no goddess of the type you knew back in Asgard. I am a simple, humble frost giantess, I finished. She looked up at me. "Oh, that is... what? Why would you say such a thing?" "It makes sense, Gjalpa. The ice patches, your immense size, your eye color changing from black to red when your temperature warms. Besides, I was talking to the Valkyrie and she said..." "Which Valkyrie? When were you talking to a Valkyrie and why?" she demanded, eyes blazing cold black fire. I saw her hands ball up into fists, and this time, so tight did she clench that particles of ice formed on the outside of her knuckles. Yesterday when they collected the body, I stayed and talked to one of them, Brynhilde. She was nice." I said that last part in barely more than a whisper. "Nice? Valkyries are not nice. They steal the souls from men, which they then trap inside a placid hall, far away from the battlefield. That is torture for warriors born, and it seems they also use their evil ways to spread foul and deceitful rumors about others. Now, typically when I have had conversations with women about affairs of the heart, it has ended with me either deceiving them into making a decision that they ultimately regret, or perhaps just transforming them into field mice to be eaten by crows. So my reaction to Gjalpa's anger was surprising to me. I reached for her hand. My palm made contact with her knuckles and stuck So icily dry was her hand, so teeth-chatteringly cold. But I didn't care. Kajalpa, fair Kajalpa, I know not the truth of my own origins. I only know the rumors and hearsay that the children of Asgard whisper about me. So I am not one to sit in judgment over another in this regard. Besides, I have only heard tell of how proud are the frost giants. They battle against the gods, knowing full well that the gods are more powerful, but never acquiescing. Why, my own doltish brother alone has slain many a frost giant. They have my respect. As would you, if that was indeed your true nature. My true nature, as you put it, Loki, necessitates that I hide who I am. It's not so easy. Why do you think I am absent on some days? I only know that on those days my heart feels diminished. She smiled a sad smile at me, and then stood, drawing herself up to her full, considerable height. Then perhaps I should demonstrate what would happen were I to show up at school on days when the sun does break through, Loki. If you will. The great limb of the world tree that blots out the sun over Jotunheim. Pull it back that the sun's rays might finally peek through. Even in this Fimbul winter is a rather temperate day, and the sun will be eager to break through a spot it has never had a chance to caress before. I did as she asked. I quickly wove a lasso out of discarded leaves and branches and, turning into an eagle to allow me to fly it up high, circled the branch. We gods have tricks that mortals cannot even guess. I returned to my human form and pulled the loop taut and yanked. The great limb creaked and groaned, but could not deny my godly power. Well, once Kajalpa added her own considerable strength to the pulling, that is. Go to sleep again. He's back to sleep. The branch bent and bowed downward, opening a hole in the canopy. Above it, the sun, so eager to reach this virgin spot of land upon which it had never been, cast sunny rays of warmth down, down. The solar rays caressed Kajalpa. They didn't touch me, for Loki ever dwells in the shadows, but they did embrace the girl next to me anyway. Her eyes softened and again changed from deepest black to darkest red. But even more surprising was the effect it had on her skin. Her face and hands began to... I love this part, by the way. Her face and hands began to appear luminescent, sparkling as though her body were covered with thousands of tiny diamonds. Her skin's brilliance was stunning to behold. I was awestruck. Never have I seen a more beautiful, captivating sight. Her sparkling, bejeweled skin cast a glow of utter brilliance across the forest floor. I was so taken aback by this that I saw great teardrops fall from my eyes and land at my feet. Only, it was then that I noticed that my eyes were in fact dry, and the falling drops of dew were coming from fair Kajalpa herself. Tears of her own? No. The drops were emitting from her cheeks, from her hands and wrists, her very fingertips seeming to melt, turning first to slush and then quickly to water. Loki, the branch... right away, my sweet. We released the rope, the great branch snapping back into place. The sun once again denied access to this land. Her skin quickly returned to its normal icy appearance. It was perhaps fortuitous that I brought on Fimbul winter, since, other than the fact that it is said to be the precursor to the god's demise, its frigid temperatures quickly restored her to normal. We sat under the branch a while, her hands in mine. So, a little sunlight. You see our dilemma. We quickly go from sparkling like jewels to puddling like dewdrops. But Loki, thanks to you and this tree, the sun need never reach me now. You give me hope of a shared existence. We could travel beyond the frigid wastelands of my homeland and see all there is to see. Every day, we could be together. Every day? Well, now see, Kajalpa, I do crave the idea of sharing my time with another, but maybe not all my time, if that makes sense. I have much that I do, and some of that time requires it be spent away from the accompaniment of others. She placed her other hand on top of mine, and squeezed. I could feel my very marrow drop by degrees as she did so. Now, Loki, it is not the way of the frost giants to have dalliances. We keep to our own kind out of an effort to protect one another from hostiles. So the only way for me to bring an outsider, especially a god who has admitted his own brother has slain my kind, is for us to form an everlasting and impenetrable bond with one another. This is what I require of you, Loki. This is what it must be, if we are to be. I did my best to mask the look of growing horror in my eyes. Spend every minute with another, even someone I had started to care about? Be showered with affection all day long without end? How could anyone of independent mind and means truly want such a thing? I was quickly leaning towards Team Brynhilda, when all of a sudden the branches suddenly exploded around us. Fragments of wood and leaf peppered across our faces and arms. I was momentarily blinded by the maelstrom, but unfortunately my other senses were not similarly dulled. My nose still worked, and it detected a familiar scent of electricity. Brynhilda was here. She flew into the clearing, leaping from her steed before it had even set foot on the ground. She drew her sword and walked toward us, her heavy bootfalls making deep impressions in the soft ground. The swaying of her sword back and forth made a deep impression upon me. Loki, what is the meaning of this? What are you doing here with her? Hello, Brynhilda. Who died and made you, work? Never mind that. Well, if you must know, an Ophirvalhalian exchange student named Aleph got himself lost and ended up getting the other half of his face burned off in an advanced smelting class. That drew me back to Jotunheim, only to find you absent from school and cavorting under Yggdrasil's fair branches with a lowly frost giant. Aleph? Poor Aleph met an untoward end again? Loki, what does that bovine mean, lowly frost giant? Loki, what does she mean by bovine? Things were quickly spiraling out of control. I had to get control over this situation before things became so untenable as to alert Heimdall or the other Asgardians as to my location. As it was, entirely too many people in Jotunheim had learned my true nature. Girls, can we all just calm down and keep our voices down? There is no need for such enmity. They both turned as one and glared at me, cowing me into silence, until I thought of what Brynhilda had said. Did you, fair Brynhilda, really say that the name of the recently departed was Aleph? I did. His dwarfish teacher miscalculated a lesson, and Aleph suffered as a result. But his suffering is like nothing compared to the suffering you will undergo, did you choose the company of that vile frost giant over that of my own. Well, now I had even more reason to escape this predicament, so I might pay back that horrible dwarf for his folly. It seemed my dog would soon eat well all week, assuming I was still mobile and had all limbs attached with which to feed him. We were just talking, Brynhilda, I started. Just talking? Loki, you were professing your undying love to me, said Gjalpa, ruining the moment I was trying to create. Undying, eh? We should see about that. And with that, Brynhilda reached down with one hand and plucked me from where I stood, throwing me into the clearing and advancing on me. She poked her sword into the underside of my jaw, and we were suddenly full circle wherewith this tale began. Loki, before I separate your lying head from your bony shoulders, I give you one more chance. Be true to your word and offer me your heart forever, that you may accompany me on my tasks and serve my needs. I am a Valkyrie and cannot shirk my duties, so this is what is required that we might be together. Well, that didn't sound much fun at all. Suddenly, the option of her removing my head from its shoulders didn't sound like the worst option presented before me. Brynhilda's blade was knocked away by a ball of ice. It was followed quickly by two more ice balls, hurled at great velocity by Gjalpa. Hands off, shield witch! Loki is mine! Brynhilda blocked the second ball of ice with her metal wrist guards, but the first struck her squarely in the face. She spit out ice and epithets with equal rancor. Foul, frigid snow pig! Loki is mine, heart and soul. Especially soul. You cold-hearted monsters don't know the first thing about how to properly love another. Oh, but I suppose you do, you carrion carrier. This was getting interesting. Gajalpa ran forward and grappled with Brynhilde, knocking her sword from her grasp. It landed near my feet. As the fighting devolved into thuggery, I rapidly weighed my options. Clearly, the idea of dating both women would avail me not. And after hearing the words that came out of both mouths during the heated arguing, it had me suddenly wondering if I should instead remain a solo player. Perhaps Team Loki had no room for such controlling types after all. Loneliness was a state with which I was well accustomed, and it was obvious that I would not willingly give up my independence in trade for fealty and servitude. My heart, which had always operated independently of others, had tricked me into thinking it needed companionship. Trickery. Of course, was I not, despite my recent foray into romantic ineptitude, still Loki? A solution, the only true solution, presented itself to me. I picked up Brynhilde's sword. Only with great effort. I managed to choose two of the strongest women I have ever come in contact with, another good reminder that I would be wise to find my way out of this double-sided predicament. As my two potential consorts fought on, I swung her sword around twice, spinning my body to build up momentum. I then released the blade upward with all my might. The sword spun end over end into the sky, finally striking the great branch I had earlier pulled back. The sword's honed edge cleaved through the giant limb without effort. The branch, separated from the trunk, started to move and sway. Finally, the weight of it pulled loose, and the great branch fell. It plunged down, down, and the whistling sound of its descent was great enough to stop the two warrior women from the battles. "Loki!" they said in unison, but only one of the two uttered my name with any confidence. As the branch traveled downward, so too did the sun's rays. Once again they bathed Gajalpa, and Brynhilde as well. Frankly, the two women looked utterly gorgeous inside the funnel of warm light. Then Gajalpa's skin took on its bejeweled tone again, although it began melting at the same time. The concentration of the sun's rays, with no canopy with which to slow it, accelerated its effect on her, and this time there were tears intermingling with the drops of water emitting from her skin, both hers and mine. As Gajalpa began puddling across the forest floor, she looked at me for the last time. Her legs had melted away enough that she was now my height and looking me directly in the eyes for a moment before continuing her moist downward trajectory. "I am undone, Loki," she gurgled. "May you forever burn in fire!" She trailed off. Liquefied lips can't easily utter words, it seems. I felt a tinge of sadness, but fought it off when I reminded myself that Loki was never meant to be a simple husband to anyone. Now, on to the second part of my quickly thrown-together scheme. I spun around to look at the Valkyrie. Brynhilde was grinning from ear to ear. She pulled loose her sword, which had also fallen back to earth and embedded itself up to its hilt, and stepped toward me. "Loki, I knew from the moment I met you that you had sharp senses. You knew that frigid behemoth wasn't right for you, and you knew I was. Oh, Loki!" She rushed toward me, planning to embrace me. I grasped her shoulders and held her away, at arm's length. "Aren't you forgetting something, fair Valkyrie?" I motioned to the puddle on the ground. "Oh, I will never forget what you have done. You have chosen a life with me, my lord. We shall get to work at once, making plans and sharing our lives." "Well, one of us should get to work anyway, only it is not wise, Loki." "What are you—" The reality of the situation began to settle in, if the look in her eyes was any indication. "You, my Brynhilde, are a Valkyrie. While a life of acquiescing to your demands and carrying your helmet while you work might hold appeal to some, it holds absolutely none for Loki. But my lack of interest in your profession does not negate the fact that you are required to see those labors through now." As I spoke, Gajalpa's spirit arose from the moist ground. The giantess perished in battle, and is awaiting its final ride to Valhalla's halls. You cannot deny your responsibilities, Brynhilde. You are a Valkyrie first, as you reminded me. Gajalpa has earned her seat inside the hall. Best be off with you, then, before your maiden sisters become aware of you shirking your duties. I do not imagine that would sit well. She stared at me with death in her eyes. But maybe it was just a trick of the light. No, it was probably death. Pulling her sword and waving it in my direction, she screamed, "Perhaps I should take two recently departed souls with me to Valhalla, deceitful snake." "Ah, Brynhilde," I sighed, picking an errant branch shard out of my teeth. My dog is sneezing. Oh, where am I? Picking an errant branch shard out of my teeth. "Would that the Valkyries were understanding enough for you to set aside responsibilities in order to carry out your petty grievances and keep poor departed souls waiting. But I do not believe they are. Best be off now. Alas, our love just cannot work around such requirements. Would that it were not so." I turned away, lest my growing smile turn into outright laughter. She knew she had no recourse. To betray the trusted duties of a Valkyrie was to renounce one's heritage and be kicked out of Valhalla for all time. I was counting on her hate for me not being quite great enough to supersede her desire to remain within those hallowed halls. I was right, but barely. As Brynhilde saw to her labors, I looked at the two one last time. Gjalpa's shade was now in the Valkyrie's grasp, and was being prepared for her trip to Valhalla. If looks could kill, well, my own Twilight would be upon me sooner than was written. "Farewell, my ladies fair. Would that things could have been different, but, as the expression goes, Loki doth not need any clinging vines. Farewell." "Loki," I heard Brynhilde say. I looked at her. Gjalpa's soul sat perched on the winged horse behind Bryn. She refused to turn her head toward me, but Brynhilde did, and her eyes blazed with red-hot anger, so great that I wondered if she too was part frost giant. "The twilight of the gods is upon the land. Your death is foretold, and is imminent. So don't think we will be separated for long, for when your corpse settles onto the ground during the coming battle, I will be there personally to see that you are taken to Valhalla, where we may spend all eternity together. And Loki," she paused, "once inside the great hall, the only kisses I plan to shower you with shall be made of tempered steel." She dug her heels into her horse, and the beast at once began flapping its great wings, until she and Gjalpa rose off into the sky and out of sight. Again with this talk about a coming battle and Loki's imminent demise. My current dating situation resolved, it was now time I did something about that as well. Chapter 3. Matchmaking. As I exited the forest and was free of Yggdrasil's shade, I noticed that the problem with the cloudy and frozen sky had begun to resolve itself in the form of great flames that looked across the horizon. It seems that our twilight was upon us. The gods were destined to fall. On the long and thankfully lonely walk out of the forest, I began thinking about the various things people had said when speaking of the coming battle. Sturdy and her flame demon friends had definitely talked about things I chose not to hear because I was too taken with affairs of the heart, which was yet another reason to remain so unencumbered. One can only properly see to one's own survival without the blinders of love. The gist of what everyone said about the imminent end of everything is that it all began with Baldur's death. Would that I had known. Well, I would not have changed a thing. That prig needed to be taken down. But this meant that if I was responsible for starting this process, I should similarly be able to stop it, at least where my own personal doom was concerned. All of Asgard could go hang for all I cared. If enabling Baldur to die also helped bring about the doom of Thor, Heimdall, and the others, well, that was a better chain reaction than I could have hoped for. But the loss of Loki would be too great indeed, at least to me. Still, we all have a part to play, and I would play mine, at least to a point. It was not fated that Loki would meet his end during our coming twilight. It was written. That makes a world of difference. The fates are rarely wrong about their castings, but the men who write things down and pass them off as fact are prone to mortal error. As I returned home and found my dog at last waiting for me, I thought about the end of the gods. Many of them deserved to fade away into the twilight, or to be locked away in Valhalla's musty halls. After all, the gods as I knew them were capricious creatures, driven as much by emotion and lust as by reason and need. But I, up until my most recent escapade, was not. I was and am fueled by a much stronger thing, the desire to make mischief and to do wrong unto others. And it was precisely those things that made me realize I needed to live beyond our foretold ending. Loki is necessary in the world to come, whereas the other gods are not. Here, pup, here, boy. My beloved Pooch ran to me, licking hunger across his lips. Good boy. Are you hungry, pup? Well, let us be off then, my little Fenris. It is finally time for you to sup. I spotted a full moon peeking out from behind a cloud on my walk back here. Perhaps that planetoid would make a good first morsel for you. But save a bit of room, for I've a nice dwarf snack in mind for you, too. As my dog, Fenris the wolf, leapt into the heavens, prepared to devour sun, moon, and gods alike, I wondered what the fire demoness Surti was doing right now. It occurred to me that I should call on her. Her team was leading the charge against the gods, and she was positioned to know victory in the coming battle. Plus, she was cute enough. She could likely use a good consort to accompany her through. And if that potentially star-crossed romance didn't survive the terrible battle to come, perhaps upon my return in the next world I should try my luck dating a vampire. I hear they are rather easy to manipulate. The end. And then it ends with a wonderful picture of a man, like, turning into Cthulhu. See? It's pretty wonderful. Well, that was a wonderful reading experience. An hour and 37 minutes and 4 seconds long reading experience. So, I'm going to go to bed now. Actually, I'm probably not going to go to bed now. I'm probably just going to read fan fiction for a bit, but and lay in bed. But I miss you, and I hope you enjoyed the story, Twilight of the Gods. And in about a month and just over a month, I'll see you. Oh, and Kathleen, and everyone else too, but we need to, I don't know what we need to do. We don't really need to do anything. I'm gonna see everybody. I'm so excited, but that's still in a while, but I have a hair in my mouth. I'm trying to get it out, but it's not working. It's like coming from the side. I don't know. Okay. Good night, or morning, or whatever by this time. Love you. Bye.